That guy's awesome. That guy's awesome. He's a Theo. Analyze his books. He is awesome. Go watch his video. What's up, Theolites? Welcome to Act 1, Scene 3 analysis. This is going to be a decently long video, but I'll try to make it as short as possible. Now, I think you all know how it goes, but if you haven't already, watch my first video called Act 1, Scene 1. After that, watch Act 1, Scene 2, and then come to Act 1, Scene 3. Because that's how things work. We go in number order. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I hope you know how to count, or else why are you even watching my videos? Alright, before I get into everything, my thought-provoking questions, I have to say, I need you to comment down below on your questions. Comment down below, comment down below, comment down below. I really want to answer some questions. I'm really intrigued for what people have to say. If no one's watching the videos, that's fine. But if you are, please comment down below so I can respond to your comment, and therefore we can start a thoughtful conversation about this play. Alright, here are the thought-provoking questions for Scene 3 of Twelfth Night. Number 1. What is the significance of the last names of the characters in the story? Number 2. How does this scene in the story starkly contrast the other two scenes? Number 3. How does Shakespeare satirize the nobility in this scene? Number 4. Why does Maria believe that Sir Andrew Aguacheek does not stand a chance to be Lady Olivia's lover? And does she represent what society would think during the time? Why or why not? Number 5. How is Aguacheek a walking contradiction? Number 6. What are the similarities and differences between Aguacheek and Belch? And number 7. Why does Sir Toby Belch believe that Sir Andrew Aguacheek should woo or court Lady Olivia? Well, let's start answering. Why let her accept before accepted? I have no care for what she thinks about me. Let her object to me before I object to her. This is what Sir Toby Belch says. This is a character in the story who just comes in during Scene 3. Now, before I go into that amazing quotation about him, why don't we start doing a little bit of characterization? Now, Maria, you see, is the reasonable character. We have Maria, Toby, and later Sir Andrew Aguacheek. Maria is very reasonable. Toby, on the other hand, is not. Essentially, he's saying that he wants his way to always be the right way. That's what he means by saying, let her object to me before I object to her. Now, exactly what do you mean, Lazar Vojkovic? Why would he mean that? Well, if he objects to her, that means he denies what she wants to say. He always gets the last word, because he can deny her words before she can deny his. Essentially, he always wants the last words, indicating that he's very selfish. Similar to Orsino, as a matter of fact. But this guy is more selfish in a different way. We can see that Toby is an alcoholic. And he literally says that he's an alcoholic based on what Maria says. She says how he must confine himself within the modest limits of order. And that's based on, of course, his drinking habits. Because he drinks, he does not come at appropriate times, and he is not respecting what society asks of him. Meanwhile, Toby does not care. Toby is basically a nonconformist during this time. But he's not really a nonconformist because he's not going against the society to show some rebellious nature. Rather, he just doesn't care. He's one of those characters who really doesn't care. Just like Sir Andrew Aguacheek. Both of those two characters, Aguacheek and Toby, really could not care less. Now, the tragedy from the very beginning in Scene 1 kind of ends, and we start to get into a more comic relief. First of all, in the beginning, we had the tragedy with Orsino talking about his lovesickness. That became a little bit more funny, so you can see that Shakespeare is lessening up the tragedy by having Viola and having the situational comedy of how she's going to dress up as a man. You're thinking about that and you're like, oh god, that must look kind of ridiculous. So that's scene 2. But then we get finally into scene 3. And scene 3 is the most humorous one of them all, where we use wordplay, and that wordplay just satirizes nobility, indicating how their education is not really education. Rather, they're quite uneducated, if I don't say so myself. But here we go. Let's talk about the beginning of wordplay when we see Toby say confine. When he says the word confine takes a double meaning. Confine means, number 1, to limit himself to societal norms, or number 2, to dress himself up. So essentially, what does that double meaning convey? Well, the double meaning conveys that his clothes depicts how he reacts to his societal norms. You see, if his clothes were very proper and not at all like things that you would find in, I don't know, Goodwill, so if they're not like drunkard's clothes, then you would think he's a very proper person. But since his clothes kind of make him they're just any sort of clothes that allow him to drink, it indicates who he is as a person. Shakespeare once said, clothes fit the man. This is indicative of that because, well, he doesn't care about his clothes, indicating that he's very neglectful about what others think about him. Now, of course, you could say that phrase is not necessarily true. Clothes don't always fit the man, but here, in his characters, they do. Personally, because whenever an author characterizes their characters, well, their clothes always depict something of who they are. Remember, authors love using symbolism. That's a big thing that will pop up in the future. But Shakespeare essentially does wordplay, not only because he wants to do wordplay for fun, but always to convey double meanings. So look for the wordplay and then look for the double meanings behind them. And I think the double meanings are the harder part to find, but try to find them. Now, why does Maria, of course, believe that Sir Andrew Aguichex does not stand a chance to be Lady Olivia's lover? Now, I've already talked about, I think, question 2, question 3, and question 4. I'll elaborate them in the future. But he doesn't stand a chance because he's a prodigal. He spends a lot of money. And you might ask, okay, why is spending a lot of money a bad thing? And I think you do know why, but I want just to answer it because this is my video. And I think that spending a lot of money is a bad thing because of one of the organs in your body that is part of love. Love is controlled by the liver, the heart, and the brain. The brain is the seat of reason, the heart is the seat of feeling, the liver is the seat of passion. But you see, the brain is the seat of reason, and if you're not reasonable, if you do stupid things, well, my friends, you can't have love, or you at least can't have love before the 1920s. You see, it was not until the 1920s that people loved impulsively, that people loved based off just feelings of love. Before, it was based off of marriage and having to be very reasonable, and it was much more of an economic symbol. And therefore, your husband would not be some sort of random fool that you hopelessly fell in love with. That would come in much in the future, in the 1920s, when conformity would try to decrease. And of course, then we get into the 50s when it does increase, but that's a whole new story. We all know that before the 1920s, and definitely during the Elizabethan era, specifically in London, there was a lot of what a husband needed, and a husband needed to be reasonable. He needed to be someone who was going to speak out and reason, and there would be very little love. It was mostly just economically done, because the wife then has to be dependent on the husband. This is the gender roles during the time. Okay. And she believes, well, he does not have enough money, and therefore he cannot support Lady Olivia. And why should Lady Olivia marry him if, well, they might actually become poor? Because, you know, he can spend all that money. And that would not be good for Lady Olivia herself. Because we don't know exactly what Lady Olivia does for a living. She may do something, but we can clearly see that she is based off of society. The nobility have to marry in some husbands who are rich enough to support them, and therefore rich enough to be viewed highly enough by society. Because if they're too low, then society will say, okay, no, we can't allow this. We can't allow this because this doesn't enforce the social hierarchies that are in place. Let's start analyzing now page 17. He hath indeed almost natural, for besides that he's a fool, he's a great quarreller, and but that he hath the gift of a coward, to allay the gift he hath in quarrelling, 'tis thought among the prudent he would quickly have the gift of a grave. This is the first line that Maria says in Act 1 of Scene 3. Although she might not say it in how I said it, she says it in a very similar way. Now, what exactly does she mean? Well, she's just trying to say that Sir Andrew Aguecheek is not the perfect person for Lady Olivia. And why does Maria believe this? Well, number one, he is a quarreler. And someone who argues a lot will not have a friendly relationship with the person that they're with. And therefore, Olivia shouldn't be with him. But not only that, even when he is quarreling, he's not confident enough to keep up his quarreling. Sometimes his quarreling diminishes. And therefore, that inconfidence is kind of against what is considered manly during the time. What do they mean? He had the gift of a coward to allay the gust he hath in quarreling. It essentially means that it's not consistent. It doesn't really have any meaning. It's very trivial because a gust, it's just not strong enough. It doesn't mean enough. And therefore, if he's not going to convince anyone, but he's just going to waste people's time quarreling, well, essentially, he will kill them. And therefore, he has the gift of a grave. Now, Toby tries to deflect everything that Maria says, indicating that he's a very defensive person and he wants things done his own way. He says, oh, they are scoundrels and subtractors that say so of him. Who are they? And then Maria does not answer, indicating perhaps that Maria knows that Toby will try to ask such questions and try to find a way to get around her responses. But therefore, she just adds more on why Sir Andrew Aguecheek is a horrible person. First of all, he's drunk, and because he's drunk, he's not necessarily the most rational person. And this makes him very similar to Sir Toby. And I think that whole idea of the nobility being all well-educated and proper and important, that's being satirized by Shakespeare. You see, Shakespeare only refers to two people in this play as sirs. He refers to Sir Toby as a sir and Sir Andrew Aguecheek as a sir. But funnily enough, these people have the least sir-like qualities of all the characters of the book. They're very irrational, and the things that they say make them look like idiots and quite stupid. I mean, they don't really know how to lead life well, and we should not be taking advice from these people. But they are definitely the comedy in the play, and essentially Shakespeare is saying, not all the nobility was so smart and well-educated. Some were quite stupid, and we should satirize the nobility by saying how they're very equal to others. Of course, why does Toby say with drinking health to my niece? He's basically joking about this idea, that Maria says how Andrew Aguecheek is all drunk. He doesn't take anything that she says really seriously because he himself is a drunkard. Therefore, he's like, oh, well, drinking health. Let's all just say cheers to this. I love this idea. And this just indicates that Toby is very indifferent to what others think about him. That was also indicated from the last page when he said how I'll confine myself no finer than I am, and then also right here with this point about drinking. Now, when it's said that Sir Andrew Aguecheek is a coward and a cloisterel that will not drink to my niece till his brains turn on the toad like a parish top, what he essentially means is he's not really that smart. He's quite an idiot. And when why is he quite an idiot? Well, he's quite an idiot because his brains just are not spinning properly enough. And that's what he means. He's just insulting, I guess, Sir Andrew Agwachek, and that's funny because at the very beginning he was talking so well about him, and now he's like, oh wait, this guy is really foolish. You shouldn't have him. But this definitely indicates how Toby is very contradictory as a character. He says one thing and then he changes completely. And lastly, when he talks about Sir Andrew Agwaface, that whole metaphor for Agwaface, this misnaming is essentially meaning the meaning of agua cheek, which is a pale or thin cheek or face. So essentially, someone suffering from a fever agua. What does this mean? So he's essentially talking about Sir Andrew Agwacheek as someone who has a pale complexion. And he's mocking him because the pale complexion is symbolic of a coward. Someone who's too scared to do something. He's not bold enough to live in society. And we don't really know a lot about his cowardliness in Scene 1 of Act 3. I guess the only thing that we really do know is that he's very foolish and he's a very big idiot, and that he's, I guess, maybe too afraid to grab knowledge. But there's not much cowardly incidents that are depicted of Sir Andrew Agwacheek, and therefore I cannot talk to you too much about his cowardliness. Now, when Andrew enters, we will see the reference of Toby as Sir Toby Belch. And what this means is Shakespeare being significant with the characters' last names. You see, Agwacheek, I talked about that, it indicates he's a coward. Belch means that Toby drinks a lot, because people who drink a lot tend to belch. And therefore, you see, these characters contrast the other characters who have more Latin-sounding names, Orsino, Maria, and others, Viola, Olivia, we even get later Malavio, or whatever not. That is a whole different set of characters, more in that love, Italy, Rome sort of pyramid. While here we kind of have almost like English/Germanic sounding names, Belgian, Agwacheek, that are more symbolically there and indicating that these characters are much more static. They don't evolve over time. They stay the same and they serve for one purpose. Toby serves for an alcoholic. Agwacheek serves as a coward. They have particular purposes in the play, and they are not much without that particular purpose. And you see, this is only done with plays, not much with stories. Because with plays, it's all about the characters that are on the stage. There's all about that sort of thing. And when we're seeing characters, we only have time to really focus on a few. And therefore, some characters must be just static and not having much of a purpose. While in a story, we can definitely focus on a lot more. But yeah, as I said, a play is much different than a story. Now, the wordplay that Shakespeare uses is accost Sir Andrew accost. Toby says this on line 48, and this essentially means, oh, Sir Andrew, approach Maria, attempt to woo her possibly. I'm not exactly sure why he would tell her to woo her, but basically just like, he's trying to show how well is Sir Andrew Agwacheek at, developing a relationship. Perhaps that's what he's trying to indicate. Of course, Andrew Agwacheek does not pick up on any of this, and he just acts like the idiot that he is, and he says, good mistress accost, because he believes he is referring Toby to her last name, and of course, he isn't. This indicates that he's not able to pick up on clues, he doesn't know much about words, and he needs, essentially, people to guide him. He needs to know what the context of something is. And of course, Toby just mocks him all the time, and he even says, at first, he tries to show, okay, this was an honest mistake. Later, he doesn't even show what the honest mistake was. He just mocks him. And just lets his ridiculousness come out. Alright, so let's analyze the next. Marry, but you shall have, and here's my hand. Andrew says this on lines 66 and 67. And what I think here is, why do they use the word marry? And they also used by my troth in the last one. Well, marry is a mild oath. By my troth means a mild oath as well. Okay, so it means truly or indeed. And apparently it's also originally an oath by the Virgin Mary. So what does this mean exactly? Essentially it's saying indeed, or perhaps I guess it just means indeed, but it's kind of that formal language, and he's like, and it doesn't. It's just that formal language that Shakespeare is using, which contrasts our current language. I just found that very interesting. You probably did. Continuing on, what does this whole section or page mean? Well, this whole page is referring to the jest metaphor. So we have to dissect these lines, the lines 67 to around, I don't know, 80-ish. We have to dissect all those lines to understand what is a jest metaphor. Okay, first of all, what is a jest? A jest is considered to be a joke. And a dry jest is a sarcastic joke. Now, when she says here, bring your hand to the buttery bar and let it drink, what that means is that you should let your hand, drink. In other words, he's considerably thirsty because, well, his hand is dry. And she makes this reference because he says, "Fair lady, do you think you have fools in hand?" And of course, this is a reference means, are you dealing with fools? And she says, "Sir, I have you not you by the hand." Essentially, it's literal versus figurative. Some people use figurative language, others take it literally. And then Maria kind of switches up the whole thing on him. She is a figurative one. He is being the literal one. That's the humor. Because if we view things in different lenses, well, then we're just all really confused. And this is just Shakespeare saying the English language has two depths, the implicit and the explicit. And you should remember that whole idea of implicit versus explicit when you're writing your analysis, because you might be like, well, this is so stupid. Why do you think Shakespeare wants to have fun? Well, he wants to just indicate the nuances in the English language. Now, the jest metaphor is essentially like this. Maria wants him to get some water. She thinks that's... Andrew does not get any of this metaphor. So this indicates that he does not understand what he means by the hand being dry. He doesn't understand exactly how the senses indicate your thirst. So if you're very dry hands, that means you might be very thirsty. He doesn't really understand that whole part about how dehydration works. And therefore, he seems very confused. Maria uses this to her advantage. She says, "It's dry, sir." And this is, of course, the joke. It's withered, or, it's thirsty. That's what you should say. That pun on that. But he doesn't get the metaphor. And, of course, he asks him, "What's the joke?" And, of course, there is no joke. But she says, "Well, my friend, if you think there is a joke, it's quite a dry one." Because she's being sarcastic, since there was no joke to begin with. That's the whole sarcasm. And not only that, we get the pun of a dry jest. His hand is literally dry, and it's also sarcastic that she's saying that because there was no joke to begin with. This is just mocking how Andrew does not have much intelligence at all. And when Andrew asks, "Are you full of them?" Maria responds, "Aye, sir, I have them at my fingers' ends. Marry, now I let go of your hand, I am barren." Meaning that he is a joke. He resembles a joke. Because his hand, when she touches it, she feels a joke. No longer does she have those dry jests. Because, well, there's something that's dry to hold on to. She's making fun of the whole idea of a dry jest, because a dry jest is a joke. She's saying, well, if something's no longer dry, then it's no longer a dry jest. Which is, of course, not true. Literal versus figurative. And then Maria leaves and exits after mocking Andrew. Andrew is very indifferent, okay? Aguacheek is a very indifferent person, and his indifference is what allows this play to not make it seem like Toby or Maria are doing something unfair. They're not crossing any boundaries of using humor to be mean whatnot, because he knows that he's an idiot and he's perfectly fine with it. And he's someone I think he kind of enjoys, hearing this talk, because this is very trivial to him. It doesn't really matter that much, and he specializes in these trifles. So this stuff probably means a lot to Andrew. Now, when Toby says, "O night, thou lackst a cup of canary, when did I see thee so put down?" Andrew says how he said, "Never in your life, I think, unless you see canary put me down." And what this is essentially is indicating how high his drunkenness can get up to. And not only that, he says that not only is he bad at drinking, he also eats a lot of meat. He says, "He is no more wit than a Christian or an ordinary man has, but I am a great eater of beef, and I believe it does harm to my wit." So he clearly has no idea what intellect is about. He thinks, oh, beef, because beef, I guess, this might be a reference, once again, to, I don't know, people who don't eat beef. It's kind of confusing why he talks about beef, but I think this is just Shakespeare being a little bit ridiculous. Personally, if I want to give you my opinion, when he says, "I am a great eater of beef," it basically indicates that he believes he indulges too much. And since he indulges so much, and beef is considered quite a royal thing to do, that does harm his intellect. And he is, in some ways, correct. Of course, he doesn't realize that he is correct. He just sort of senses it. It's kind of like a child. A child senses they're correct, but they don't really realize it. You see someone who indulges too much in something that's expensive and rich for the time. Of course, beef was not really eaten a lot. That was something eaten by the royals. They are going to stop caring about other important things in life because they're so much indulging in this food that they forget all else and can only think about their indulgences. So that's Andrew summed up for you. He's a little bit greedy, and he is not very smart, and he admits it himself. And Toby's like, no question. I think Toby realizes the deeper implications of everything. And then lastly, we just indicate more of the uneducatedness of the nobility, which is satirizing the nobility completely because the nobility is supposed to know everything. Knights are supposed to be well-trained in the languages. Andrew has no idea what pourquoi means, which is why. And he says, do or not do. Pourquoi, my dear knight? It's like, should he go ride tomorrow or should he not ride tomorrow? And he doesn't understand. Both of those questions are not at all relevant to why. He's asking, something completely unrelated. And the reason why he didn't learn it is because he was fencing, dancing, and bear baiting. Essentially, just mere entertainments that are fun to him. He's an activity jock. If you don't know what an activity jock is, it's someone who literally specializes in activity and doesn't care about the academics. Someone like Max Fisher in the movie Rushmore by Wes Anderson. Go watch that movie. And Toby says, "Then hast thou had an excellent head of hair." Toby's trying to find one good thing about him. He thinks that his appearances look pretty good. And honestly, that's probably the only good thing about him. But I guess you could just say, don't judge a book by its cover. If the book here is our friend's Sir Andrew Aguacheek. "She's none other than a count. She'll not match above a degree, neither in estate years nor of it. I've heard her swear it, thus there's life in the man." Alright, so, Octavian Scene 3, let's do this. Now, Andrew Aguacheek has hair that's like flax, and what Sir Toby's saying is that he can woo someone. He can woo particularly a housewife with that flax because she will spin the hair off of him. I have no idea how that's going to happen, but alright, let's see that hair come off. Now, that whole feeling of his hair just being so smooth, it indicates his appearances. And his appearances look pretty good for him being him. But that's the only good thing about him. Because behind those appearances, he is, as I've said, a stupid idiot. And why is he a stupid idiot? Well, it's because he's an uneducated person. But the thing is, I don't blame him. He should have the decision to do whatever he wants to do. But the thing is, society does. You see, Sir Andrew Aguacheek is a noble. But nobles are supposed to be educated during this time. And therefore, if you're not educated as a noble, then why are you a noble? You should be a commoner. So, Shakespeare's saying how it's not fair that we give higher treatment to some people of higher social hierarchies. And we have higher expectations from nobles rather than for people of lower, right? Because there can always be differences and exceptions. And he's satirizing it by making some people exist that would probably not exist in the society. And that satire serves to the comedy of how society is based off of a structure. And once that structure disappears, then what's next? As I've always said, or actually I've never said this before, but I'll say it right now. History is the life that already exists. English language arts or literature is the life of the things that may once exist, that could exist. It's the area of possibility. Here's the area of truth. And interestingly enough, there is some area where the truth and the possibility intersect. The Communist Manifesto, for example, is an intersection of this. But that's just a whole new story for a whole other time. Let's continue on here. Now, Andrew does not believe that he will woo Lady Olivia. And let's be honest, based on what society says, he probably won't. And I don't think Toby believes that either, but Toby does try to show some encouragement, which seems rather strange. I think he's only doing this because he knows the advantages that he will get if Sir Andrew Aguacheek is in a relationship with Lady Olivia. Because number one, he can exploit Sir Andrew Aguacheek because of Aguacheek's stupidity. After all, Toby is the suitor, and we have no idea what Toby's intentions are, but we certainly know that he wouldn't ever get someone like Sir Andrew Aguacheek to love Lady Olivia if there was not some reason behind it. Now, when Toby talks about something about faith, I'll home tomorrow, Sir Toby, your niece will not be seen, or if she be, it's 4-1, she'll none of me. The Count himself here hard by woos her. That's what Andrew says, and it just basically him saying that there's no chance. But what's interesting, what Toby says, he says, she's none other than the Count. She'll not match above her degree, neither in estate, years, and wit. I have heard her swear, there Tuster's life in demand. I've said this quote before, but I'll say it again. And what this quote means is that Lady Olivia will not be in love with someone who's of a higher estate or a higher social status in her. And I think the reason why she believes this way, or exactly the rumors that say that she believes this way, is probably because she doesn't want to always have a man who has to seem somewhat superior. Because society always dictates how the man has to be like someone superior to the woman. And this is kind of a stupid thing. And she's like, no, I think that I want to be the head of the relationship. And this is perhaps not necessarily allowed in society. So that's kind of the contradiction that Shakespeare's trying to make, is it's not fair that we have to always have the man as a higher role. But that might not exactly be it. That's just more of my theoretical analysis on it. I think it also might just mean she really does not want anything royal. She's not someone that wants to be pettied with all these fancies and all these fancy, weird, stupid things. She wants to have something rational. She wants, I guess, true love, or Sinna wants the idea of love. And she probably knows that if she marries into a higher social status, or higher wit, or higher years, that that person will not be really married for their actual qualities. That she will only marry that person simply because, well, he looks better on the resume. continuing on, Andrew he says, "Oh, I'll stay a month longer then. I am a fellow of the strangest mind in the world. I delight in masks and revels, sometimes all together." So Andrew's a strong partier, and the reason why he likes partying is because it's a trivial thing. It's something to entertain him. What's interesting is that if we saw Sir Andrew Aguichi in, let's say, a dystopian society like Fahrenheit 451, I'm going to make an allusion to that book right now, he'd probably be someone like Mildred or someone similar to that, who's just watching television and having so much fun. This guy would be the biggest TV lover in the world, always full of entertainment. But here, this is his TV. He has to make his own entertainment. And that just indicates how entertainment has changed from before to the future. Now, when Toby says, "Are you good at these kickshaws or trifles?" and Andrew says, "As any man in Illyria whatsoever he be, under the degree of my betters, and yet I will not compare with an old man." This is funny, actually, because he says that an old man is the best with trifles. And I guess that's kind of true, because I guess when you're much older, you don't really have time to do, like, academic pursuits and to really spend time doing scientific studies. You're kind of doing petty trifles, because that's what your life wants to be. It's fun. It's living your life out to the fullest, and therefore, this is Andrew carpe dieming. And, of course, he's like, I feel like I'm on this level, and I'm really happy about it. And he's definitely happy about the life he leads, and I think that he deserves to lead the life. Of course, there is one good thing. He is good at the Gaillard dance. The Gaillard's a leaping dance. They use wordplay. Faith, I can cut a caper. A caper is a leap. And he says, I can cut mutton to it, essentially, because they're both foods. He's like, oh, I can cut that as well. That's the joke. But really, he's just talking about a leaping dance. He just makes a random food reference, just, I guess, to throw in a little bit of randomness. I don't know why people do that, but I guess that was humor during the time, those sort of puns. And furthermore, lastly, I want to go with Toby. He says this: "Wherefore are these things hidden? Wherefore have these gifts occurred before him? Are they like to take dust, like Mistress Mull's picture? Why dost thou not go to a church in a Gaillard and come home in a Coranto? My very walk should be a jig. I will not so much as make water, but in a syncopace. Why dost thou mean, is it a world to hide virtues in? I did think, by the excellent constitution of thy leg, it was formed under the star of a Gaillard." Now, essentially, he's just amazed that this guy is so good at dancing, because I think that Sir Andrew Aguichi is not seen as someone who's capable of these things because of his unintelligence. And that's why he's like, how, why, where? But Sir Andrew Aguichi is capable, and I don't know what to say. Maybe this means, perhaps, that you can underestimate some people, and that it's kind of stupid to make one person's idiot is another person's intelligent, intellectual, academic. One person's treasure, another man's poison. Similar to that. And I know I'm just paraphrasing. And what I just want to say is Andrew really seems to be someone who is alright with everything. He's alright with being a dancer, as ridiculous as it may seem, and, well, I applaud him on that. And that's page 23. So, this is where Toby and Andrew talk, and this might be the last part of where we find that maybe Toby Belch is not the smartest person, or this could be just plain old mocking. But before I continue, why don't I talk about how is Aguichi a walking contradiction? And I'll say this for one reason. You see, we talk about Aguichi as an idiot, and I've talked about this based on my last page analysis, but he's a walking contradiction is that he's not good at all at the arts. He says, oh, I don't really know how to ride. Or you clearly understand he doesn't understand wit and wisdom, yet he's great at performing arts. He's really good at dances, but he's not good at all at, the wisdom and wit. And this is indicative that this whole idea of Sir Andrew Aguichi being bad at the arts is not true, or you can be good at some arts, but bad at others. You see, Sir Andrew Aguichi is portrayed as a complete idiot, but he's not really. He's actually quite intelligent in some methods, in some ways of dancing. We've seen how he dances, and it's pretty good. And not only that, he has pretty good flax of hair and whatnot. But I'm just saying, that's the whole walking contradiction part, if you were wondering about question number 5. I think I answered all the questions. Questions 1 through 7. I'm going to just check here if I haven't covered anything, but I believe, I think I covered everything. I can just talk one more thing about the 3K. Did I talk about the 3K ducats? I think I did. I talked about how the 3K ducats is just not enough because you need someone with a steady income. And also, I'm just wondering, how do ducats compare to other currency? Just look that up if you're curious, like I am. Also, let's finish off 12th Night, because I know you guys want to finish it off, so let's finish it off as well. Now, when Toby says, "What shall we do else? Were we not born under Taurus?" Andrew responds, "Taurus, that's side and heart. No, sir, it is legs and thighs." And then in the notes it says, "Taurus is neck and throat." Essentially, both of them are wrong about what Taurus means. And probably the zodiac sign of Taurus symbolically represents who you're supposed to be. I'm just guessing. Maybe Taurus is like symbolic of the arts. So if you're good at arts or dancing, you are born under Taurus. And that perhaps is the whole joke. And maybe I actually now get why Toby says it. He says, "No, sir, it is legs and thighs." And because, Toby's using his legs for dancing, and Andrew is using his legs for dancing. And therefore, it's kind of like, oh, you can dance because of Taurus, because of that zodiac sign. Of course, he's mocking Sir Andrew's unintellectual ideas because, well, Taurus is not any of these. Or it could just be that Toby does not even know about the sign of Taurus. But I think it's honestly more mocking, because Toby literally spends his whole time just mocking him and saying, "Oh, yeah, you'll be fine. Oh, you still have chance," but it's very unlikely that he believes that Sir Andrew Aguichek has a chance with Lady Olivia. Alright, let's head over to our dictionary segment. First of all, what does assail mean? Assail means to violently attack. Now, what is that in the context of scene 3? Well, here we see that Toby says, "Accost Sir Andrew, accost," and if accost means attacker, perhaps that means how many different definitions accost can mean. That's, of course, why Toby says, "You could have done so many different things, and all these different things. You could have attacked her, you could have approached her, but what you chose to do, you thought it was her last name. That is how ridiculous you are as a human being." Okay, continuing on. A dancing star. I realize now what a dancing star is. I before did not know. Now I do. A dancing star is someone who is really good at dancing. So someone who is favorable towards dancing, just like, I guess you could say, Sir Andrew Aguichek, because he knows exactly how to dance. And up, and we caper, and when they leap, Gayard. Okay, so Gayard is a type of dance. I don't know if you knew about that, but it is. Kickshaws are trifles. And let's finish it off with our last word. What is a parish top? It's like this really big top, sometimes that they use in the public. It was used more in the Renaissance time. You might see it during Renaissance times, and that's what it is. And there might be some sort of symbolic meaning. I think it just means something that perpetually moves around and around and around. That's the whole point of it. And what that's trying to say is that his brain is really so dumb that he needs to get it smarter so that it starts moving faster. Because when something moves faster, then, well, it's always better, isn't it? It's always having more energy, and more energy usually means more intelligence. Hey, Thingalettes, welcome back. You've stayed around so long. Now, remember, don't forget to subscribe. Comment down below if you have any questions about the video, or you're just wondering about the scene at all in particular, Or if you really just have something that you have to ask me, well, I need those comments so we can start some conversations. And then, as always, Theo, thanks for reading.